Kia ora, koutou. This is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about wellbeing and activism. I'm really excited today. I've got Grace Leung with me, who is somebody I've known for years, but hardly ever get to actually just sit down and talk to her about this kind of thing. So, and she also lives in Australia at the moment, so it's been years since we've chatted, and I'm just really excited to have her here. She's an awesome ecologist and comedian with a background in activism, and so I'm just really excited to hear her reflections. I thought, so welcome, Grace. I'll start by saying welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Kia ora.
Kia ora. So yeah, I thought I wouldn't ask you to give your resume of activist experience or anything like that. I feel like this is not a channel that's about proving your creed or anything like that. But what I would love you to talk about is just maybe as a sort of an introduction, just say something exciting that you're working on at the moment or involved in, just because I think that it's always great for all of us to hear that there are exciting things happening in the world that we don't know about. So yeah, just love to hear a little bit from you about something you are excited about right now.
Yeah. Well, actually, the thing I'm most excited about is prioritizing my well-being. Yeah. So I'm doing my PhD at the moment, but also I'm dabbling a little bit and just going supporting, the Black Lives Matter protests here in Australia, and also doing what I can with the movement here for human rights in Hong Kong, because my family's from Hong Kong, so it's a matter that's really close to my heart. But what I'm really excited about is actually and I've been attempting self-care for years and years, but I'm like, no, this is actually going to be a priority now. So I've even decided to transfer to a master's in the meantime instead of a PhD, because because of COVID-19, the time pressures of the master's and having to do field work is just going to be really high pressure. And well, the pressures of a PhD are pretty high anyway. But with COVID-19 changing everything, and I should mention that I've been living with multiple chronic illnesses for about 10 years now. So I've got fibromyalgia and ankylosing spondylitis, which is an autoimmune disease that causes arthritis in the spine. So I'm just putting my foot down and being like, no, you have to take care of yourself first and foremost, more than anything, which is really hard. But I'm excited about it because I think this is the first time in my life I'm actually taking it seriously. So that's what I'm excited about at the moment.
Awesome. That's such a cool answer, and perfect for this channel. You've come to the right place. Or I've brought.
Yeah, I know. It's probably.
I'm happy to have you because that's.
Yeah, it's probably the space where I'm most comfortable being in other spaces I'd probably be oh, I'm not really doing anything at the moment. I'm being completely useless, but just trying to look after myself. What a jerk.
Yeah. But it was yay! Me too, exactly. That's what I'm doing as well. Well, and raising a child, but yeah.
Oh yeah, just
like that. I'm so excited or so happy to hear for you that you have decided to bring it down to a master's, because for a few years you've been talking about prioritizing your well-being, and I can see you doing that and stuff, but I always did, I kind of think about it every now and then. I remember what it was like when I did my PhD, and I sort of think it's quite funny that you're oh, I'm going to do my PhD now so that I've got time to look after myself, and it's oh yikes, that's quite a crunching kind of, you have a lot more freedom of time when you're studying, which is choice, and it does allow you to to
yeah,
look after yourself more in lots of ways. But
yeah,
you also,
yeah.
the pressure and some of those things can be hard to.
Yeah, I know it was such like, it sounds like such a flippant thing to say. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do a PhD so I can chill out a bit, you know? Like, but I totally knew how hard it was gonna
Mm,
be.
mm,
Like that, it's more a reflection of like how ridiculously full on my life was before that. Like
for
doing a
sure,
PhD and having that just freedom of time.
for sure.
It was kind of a you know, step down, or just like
Yeah,
a notch down in terms of how much more chilled out it was. And like,
yeah,
because I just struggle so much with um just not doing anything, or just
mm,
settling for what I feel like is not doing enough, which is like my own shit. And that's part of
yeah,
the whole like focusing on my well-being thing, is like reflecting on that pressure on myself, and why I put so much pressure on myself to like achieve and
mm,
do more, and always like put myself last, because like there are so many issues in the world that are bigger and I think are more important than me as an individual.
yeah,
But yeah, like even this PhD thing, I'm like, no, it's too much, and
mm,
I don't I don't need it. Like the world isn't going to change because of the research that I was going to do.
mm,
I can come back to it later if I'm in a better state of health.
yeah,
And yeah, it's just kind of, it's that whole like oxygen mask thing. You have to put your own on before helping others. Otherwise, you're just passed out and useless.
yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, but yeah, it was like definitely like a decision that took a really long time to
Mm,
make. Like,
mm,
and like most of it was just fighting with my ego.
yeah, I know that one.
And I think, yeah, yeah. I mean, like the PhD is one thing. It's like, oh, like so many people secretly or not so secretly do a PhD because they just want to be called doctor at some point. Um, but it's also like, it's the same with activism. It's that whole trying to let go of that mentality that, you know, I have to save the world, like it's my responsibility. Like part of that is so tied to your
Mm,
ego.
totally.
And yeah, and letting that go and having like that humility to be like, it doesn't just rest on you as an individual. Yes, do what you can,
Mm.
but you alone can't save the world. It's just not a thing. Like
Yeah.
I really liked, I think it was you that like put up a quote on Facebook that said like a choir can
Oh, yeah.
sing a note continuously because everyone else carries on singing while others take a breath.
Yeah.
So like that's just like a perfect metaphor for like, sometimes you got to take a breath and you got to trust your community that the work will keep going on. Of course it will. Like it
Yeah,
can't depend on
yeah,
one
yeah.
person. Like that's just silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful quote, eh? That was a friend of
Oh,
mine
it's
who said that,
gorgeous.
and I
Yeah.
just shared it on, so I can't take major credit for it. But just yeah, really beautiful. And yeah, really I don't know, it makes you think of like what would be the opposite if you just try to keep singing even if you're out of breath. Like you say, you're just gonna, it's like the oxygen mask thing, you know, you're just gonna like pass out or
Yep.
just start squeaking and not performing anymore. Like you're just kind of straining and yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you end up passed out, like
Mm,
sometimes literally.
mm, mm,
Yeah. I've
totally.
definitely worked myself to the point where I've fainted or just been bedridden
Yeah.
because of my chronic illnesses. So it's like, and that's very much, you know, the body saying like, that's enough now. We can, nope, that's too much. That's way too much.
Yeah.
You gotta chill. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, do you, like, we're already sort of talking about it, but did you have sort of somewhere you wanted to begin with? I guess the other, after I was going to ask you, like, what are you excited about? We're already into it, but I was going to say, you know, do you just want to share your thoughts on well-being and activism? Is there somewhere that you sort of really wanted to start with that we haven't made it to yet, or?
Not particularly. I mean, like, yeah, definitely I'm excited about self-care and like just really looking into the roots of kind of why I have this or had this kind of like almost like a martyr kind of mentality about activism and this idea of self-sacrifice and you know, like I've been going to therapy and you know all that stuff and just looking into and like I've been looking a lot into like neuroplasticity and also like the roots of trauma and how that affects your behavior, like trauma as a child.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like massive traumas or like, you know, I wasn't abused or anything as a child, but just like little traumas that really shape you as a person. But also looking into neuroplasticity and how you can kind of transform that into more positive behaviors. Yeah, so just getting really nerdy about self-care because I have a tendency to get nerdy about stuff, but I'm really I'm really excited about it because it's like they're like really exciting fields of research, but it's also like, oh look, I'm focusing on me for once. So yeah, really excited about that.
That's so cool, and God, I can relate to that so much. I mean, that's probably why I started this channel, because I'm like, I'm interested in something, I've got to be a nerd about it. So
yeah, it's so great. I love that you're doing this. It's so cool.
Thank you. But yeah, do you want to tell us some of the stuff that you're learning? Do you think that there's stuff that you're learning there that you can kind of share with this audience or summarize, or are there just things that you know that you're applying or whatever that feel juicy and useful to you and stuff from the things you're learning?
Yeah, I think probably listening to the body is really important. Like I ignored that for so long to the point where I got really sick. Like when I was working in international aid in my mid-20s, and like I was doing like 60 to maybe 80-hour weeks doing like all-nighters and stuff. And like when I was working in Timor-Leste, I would I think I worked like 20 days in a row without having a day off, and it was like meetings from the moment that I wake up till like after dinner, you know, meetings with people. And it was, you know, it was a real privilege to be able to do that work, but it also I was just completely ignoring my body and like running on adrenaline and cortisol all the time. And yeah, so it was around then in my mid-20s that I started getting really sick. Like I just woke up one day and I tried to sit up, but my back and like all of the tissues between my ribs were so inflamed that like I completely couldn't breathe. So that was really disturbing, like because I'd never experienced anything like it, and it kind of came on quite suddenly. Like I'd always had kind of like a bit of a sore back from the computer a lot, but like
so many of us do. You wouldn't necessarily. Lots of us live with it, and you wouldn't know that something like that's building into something.
Yeah, exactly. And like maybe looking back, there were little signs like, oh yeah, my back was getting worse and worse, and yeah. But even like if it didn't culminate in like a massive like arthritic episode, like the fact that so many of us have issues because we're on the computer so much is an issue, you know, like we shouldn't be in pain all the time. But yeah, it turned out that I had like an autoimmune form of arthritis, and it didn't get diagnosed for about 5 years after that first episode, and like it came with like a lot of gut issues as well. Like I got like really, really bad like inflammatory bowel disease. And that wasn't diagnosed for about 5 or 6 years after the symptoms started, and it was really bad. Like I had to like go to the emergency room a few times because the pain was so bad. And like I have a pretty high pain threshold. Like I'm pretty good at ignoring my body. Like one time I was in the ER and like I had concert tickets for that night, and like they like once the painkillers set in, I was like, I think like I'll be okay to go to the gig tonight. You know, that's how like in denial of like of what my body is trying to tell me. Like that's how bad I am at ignoring my body. And like I'm just starting to really listen to it. So but it's hard, like when you've been when you've trained yourself to do that all your life
from so little way, like from before you even were rational. So
totally. And like there's so much unlearning to do before you can start learning again. And it's difficult. It's a journey. It's like, I need to devote way more time to this than I can do while I'm doing a PhD. So
so
this comes first.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And it's like, especially because like aside from the fact that, you know, of course you deserve to not be in pain all the time, and of course our bodies are what we live in, like they're the vessel that carries our activism or whatever, right? Like in our minds and any intellectual work that we can do, like we can't do anything without our bodies, so you can't wear it ragged. For me, I mean, so that's for you, I guess, but for me, like, you know, I want you to be around and strong and still able to do stuff in the future, eh? Like it's that thing of being able to take that moment to breathe now so that all of us can enjoy you later, kind of thing, you know what I mean? I don't know, that sounded a bit weird, but you know what I mean? It's like, selfishly, I want you to be well as well. You're amazing, you know, and
thank you. No, it's great to hear that you're doing the same thing, like, because like we haven't, like we've known each other for a really long time, but like there's only been like a handful of occasions where we've hung out properly, and it's because we've been so busy, like
totally
ridiculously busy all the time. But, like every time we've hung out, it's just been awesome. So
it's funny though, because I was thinking like you know, we've known each other for years, but we have not had a lot of this kind of opportunity to just sit down one-on-one, sort of in a wider social circle and stuff. Like, because I should say, Grace is one of my brother's best friends, so I mostly see Grace and his things with my brother Benjamin, and usually we're drunk and not really having it's usually sort of dancing or something. And that, I mean, that was the thing I was thinking
or karaoke
about. Totally, or watching roller derby or something. Is those things
so much fun.
Lots of fun things. But there was something that I've been kind of thinking about with you, is that like you sort of sharing your stories and stuff makes me think, I don't know, kind of makes me check my own toxic comparison and stuff, because you're somebody who I would, you know, like I say, just sort of mostly see in those kind of fun, light social situations. And I would think, you know, Grace does all this amazing stuff. Like I knew that you were doing lots of cool work and activism and stuff, and still managing to show up for your friends and be really fun, and you know what I mean? And I would sort of, like, I think I hadn't really thought about it until we were planning to have this chat, but I think that maybe unconsciously or whatever, I was like, no, Grace is better at being a person than me. You know, like Grace is more able to, you know, because normally when I'm really full on with some kind of project, I'm just really, it's like I'm doing that job, I'm going home, I'm eating, I'm sleeping, I'm getting up and doing that job kind of thing. And I hardly ever will make it out to see friends or whatever. And so I think I would look at you and think, you know, Grace is able to do both kind of thing. She must be a better person than me. And I guess it's just, I guess I'm just sort of realizing now that you just don't know the costs that other people are bearing for their ability to show up in the world, I suppose. You know, you don't know what's going on inside other people's worlds when you're making
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think like one, you're fucking amazing. So I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this thing, but
yeah, you can. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't know what episode yet where I have it, so please.
Yeah, and yeah, because like a lot of people have said, and like this is people, you know, like close friends included, and people that I've worked with and stuff that you know, I've been sick around them for years, but they like until I told them, because like I don't know, I needed to like reduce my hours or whatever. You know, everyone says, oh, I never would have guessed, like, you know, because I'm such a high energy person when I'm, you know, on. But yeah, that's the thing, like people didn't see me when I was bedridden or just like, you know, I couldn't move, couldn't sit up in bed, and partly that's because I'm like, I've learned to hide pain and hide sadness and all of that stuff, like that was part of my upbringing. It's also like my fear of vulnerability, like I don't want people to see me as weak, and that's like part of what I'm working on as well, is the ability to like show vulnerability, to ask for help. Because like if I think about like any of my friends being in my situation, you know, like there's no way I would judge them. Like of course I would want to be there for them, or you know, all of that stuff. And so like part of my journey, which kind of just came by accident, but like I kind of it's like a visual diary for me on Instagram.
Oh yeah, choice.
Yeah, because like I do like writing stuff down, but like I'm a very visual person, and like part of my condition, it turns out, like because I experience chronic pain and inflammation that's affected my neurological function. So like my memory's been like greatly reduced because of that. And so like visual things really help. So like my Instagram, like I have a lot of photos from like before I moved to Australia, and I was really, really sick, and also like I was in quite an unhappy relationship, and you know, like I wasn't happy with my job, and like everything just, it was the moment before everything really needed to change dramatically. And like I look at those photos and I can feel how miserable and how sick I was. And so like I've made a point of like using my Instagram as like a visual diary of capturing those moments, like of, you know, people like to present all the fun things, all the good things, all the like delicious things they're eating, whatever. Like but also like
everything that's not the vulnerability, like you're sort of
definitely overemphasizing the good bits, but like so I make a point of capturing, you know, those days when I'm stuck in bed and I look like shit, so I'll take a picture of that. Like I've got like every 4 weeks I inject myself with immunosuppressants. It stops my spine from fusing together. So every so I'll take a video clip of that, and like I'll probably make something funny of it because it's me, but like it also reminds me.
I'll have to link your YouTube there as well for those.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So
but yeah, like it also reminds me of the date that I need to do my injections. But yeah, and I've like quit drinking as well. So like I make a note of like recording what that journey is like and like how much I fucking hate it. Because I love drinking, like, you know what I'm like when I drink. Yeah, like,
yeah, you're fun. And
yeah,
that's it, like, because I would never have realized that you had an issue with drinking, because whenever we were drinking, we were just fun drinking, and it was just like, this is just, yeah.
It was just like a really fun thing, but it was part of like those patterns of denial, like,
Totally.
yeah, like I've had a binge drinking problem since I was about 14.
Yeah.
Like drinking really heavily. But I guess our culture condones drinking, like social drinking, so much that a lot of people don't see it as an issue.
Sure.
But like it just got worse and worse as my pain got worse and worse, and it was like I was self-medicating with it, and it just got really out of hand. And I've been, you know, trying to cut down or like quit for years, but I've just gone over 100 days, and like,
wow,
this is like the longest I've ever gone without alcohol since I was like 13 or 14. So yeah, amazing. And it's like
so cool.
It's really confronting.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people do, like, I don't know, dry July, and they're like, yeah, I feel so like detoxed and like amazing, like so much energy, and it's like, nah, I haven't felt any of those things. I feel like shit, and like I have to like sit with my demons and sobriety, and it's fucking awful and I hate it. But I'll like record that on Instagram, and it'll help me look back. And you know, there are some things I wrote like a year ago, and like sometimes I feel like I've made no progress, but I'll look back on the Instagram and be like, oh yeah, that's right, like I was in a lot more pain this time last year, or like, you know, like 2 years ago I was in a really bad situation where I couldn't see a way out, and now, like, you know, I had the strength to like uproot everything and move to Australia, where the weather is so much better for my health, and, you know, pursue my dream of doing science and look after myself more. And so it's like, it's really important to give yourself credit for looking after yourself, because it seems like such a trivial thing, and a lot of activists that have that sort of like sense of selflessness feel really guilty for looking after themselves. But it's so important, and like sometimes it's the hardest thing to do.
That's such a good point, because it's so often sort of it can feel around us in our sort of activist culture like like that stuff is just trivial and silly and all kind of just fun, and just sort of like for wanting to be lazy, or all those kind of like negative self-indulgent kind of ideas. But like you say, actually, depending on you know, depending on the family dynamics or whatever you're bringing with you to the activism, it actually can be really, really, really challenging to just be kind to yourself and do the things that
totally. Like I've even like written on, so this is my like nerd whiteboard wall, but I've even written, I don't know if you can see it, but it says like, be nicer to yourself, you stupid bitch. And it says like, drink water and eat food. Like, it's so amazing how much you can neglect yourself when you're focused on helping others. When you see a cause bigger than yourself, it's so easy to neglect yourself.
Totally.
And like, you know, the intentions, they're good, but again, you're not helping anyone if you're not looking after yourself. And like, I had this moment when I was working back when I was working in international aid, and I was like pulling all-nighters because I was working on a project in West Papua, and it was like a women's micro enterprise project, and part of it was like helping them set up an organic market garden, And I kind of thought for a moment, like, it's kind of hypocritical of me to, and I know, like, you know, that's part of my privilege, is that, like, I have the ability to help others. Like, there's nothing wrong. I always say there's nothing wrong with privilege. It's what you do with it. But, and obviously people in West Papua are facing much bigger challenges than I ever have. But it's also kind of, it seems a little bit hypocritical that I'm not kind of walking the walk, like, in terms of, like, I don't have, like, back then, like, I didn't have time to look after my garden because I was working all the damn time, you know, like, I didn't have time to look after myself if I'm, like, fighting for people to live well. I wasn't living well at all. Like,
Totally.
I wasn't eating properly. Like, I forgot to eat all the time. So I was like, is this hypocritical of me? Like, and I, like, it's a very privileged position to be in, but also pretty legitimate, I think.
For sure. And I think two things about that. Like, one, I can relate to it so much. Like, when I was working in sexual violence prevention, which is all about, I mean, it's about lots of things, but the sort of the thing that we tried to stay focused on is healthy relationships and well-being, and, you know, being, you know, connected to community and all those things that keep us sort of socially well as physically well, you know. And the irony of how many of us were just run ragged, not living that well-being that we were trying to promote in the world, kind of thing, is just, and I think that is in all kinds of areas, of people trying to, whether it's sort of social services or activism or whatever. We're like, I think ultimately people who are working in change, like, just want the world to be living well, and we have to be part of that. You know, we have to be part of that. And I guess it makes me think of that other thing too, whereas, like, getting more sick doesn't make other people be well, eh? Like, you know, you can't
totally
destroying your own health doesn't, I mean, yes, all the good work, I'm sure you were doing lots of awesome work, so all that awesome work is still valuable and contributing something, but ultimately destroying your own health doesn't, you know, somehow make the injustices of the world disappear. Like, it.
That's right. Yeah, self-sacrifice is not very effective. It's not a very effective method. Yeah, and I always, like, so like, you know, a lot of my friends are also activists, or, you know, they're very passionate about the environment and social justice and all of that. And, you know, like, I'm attracted to people who are passionate like that, but I also see a lot of my friends also running themselves ragged and stressed, and I can see them fraying at the edges. And I keep saying, like, don't be like me, because, you know, sometimes you can get away with it, but, like, ultimately your body pays the price. And, like, if you end up like me, you know, your body just crashes completely. Like, you know, hopefully, like, none of my friends will, you know, suffer any conditions like mine, but, like, it just,
don't
like,
know, do you?
fully crashed. And you know, you don't want your body to get to a point where it just fully crashes, but you hear about it all the time, like people suddenly suffering from chronic fatigue, or, you know, a lot of autoimmune conditions are triggered by chronic stress.
For sure.
And so many activists are just running on stress and adrenaline all the time. That's how you keep going and going and going until you crash one way or another. And it would be so great if we learned how to prevent that by pacing ourselves a bit more. Like, we would be so much more effective over the long run, and we would live so much better instead of just being stressed and, like, just kind of having the sense of unease that we're not doing enough all the time. Like, if we believed that we were doing enough and looking after ourselves at the same time, we would actually be so much more effective. And philosophically as well, it just fits so much better with the activism philosophy, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's so true. Yeah. I know that makes me think too, like, again, part of the reason I started this channel was because I feel like in some of the activist scenes where I've been in, I don't know so much about the environmentalist movement, but which you'll know heaps more about than me, but in the kind of anarchisty scene, it's very youth driven. And there's like, youth are great, like, so this is not an ageist thing that I'm saying, but I think part of the reason it's so youth driven is not just because everyone grows up and becomes sort of cynical and, you know, joins a government job or whatever. I think, which is often the way that's talked about, I think that it's, a lot of it is that people just get tired. They have these kind of experiences that you're talking about. Not everybody, like you say, has had intense immunodysfunction situation that you had, but sorry, I don't know if I said that right, but you know, like in so many different ways, like whether it's just people's hearts or their minds or their bodies, like one of those things just wearing out as we get older. And I think that must be so many stories out there from older activists that the younger people don't hear. You know, all the cautionary tales, I guess, you know, like I feel like so much of this channel has been my kind of cautionary tale, and I hear your kind of cautionary tale, like, don't be like me, kids, kind of thing, you know.
Totally. It's like, my back hurts all the time now because I was so angry. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Oh my God. And that, like, God, that's such an interesting point though. Anger, like, can we direct our anger in different ways? Can we acknowledge our anger at things that are happening in the world and work it out of our bodies in ways that don't hold it in our bodies, or just keep us like overworking because we've got to do something with this like an energy that we're so, you know? Like,
yeah, totally. And you make a really good point about you know, people getting involved in activism when they're younger, because they do have all this energy, and like often when people are just kind of just discovering their social consciousness and, you know, kind of open their eyes to the wider world and injustices and all of that, like they become like really impassioned about it, which is great. But, you know, maybe it is like part of us as the elders to be like, okay, like that's fantastic, but learn to look after yourself and channel that energy in a constructive way as well. But it's also like I still do get angry because the world is so fucked up, like,
for sure.
And like I think back on like when I first started getting into activism, like I think, you know, I started like I went vegan when I was like 14 because I was interested in animal welfare and also environmental sustainability, and it kind of branched off from there. But I look at the world now and it's like, how is it not better in so many ways, you know? Like, how have we all worked so hard, and some of it is like even more fucked up than it used to be. And but also acknowledging, like, you know, a lot of the things that have improved, but you know, there is a place for anger. It just needs to be channeled right, but I have no idea how to do that. I just get sad.
yeah. That's what I end up to. I go to that kind of collapsed sad place when I'm angry too. That's why I made that video about completing stress cycles, because I found like I'm not good at applying it. Like when I read that book about burnout and completing the stress cycles, and how like every time you have sort of an angry response to something, or a, you know, or whatever, a fear response or whatever, it's going to run in your body, and if you don't sort of do something with it, like physical or sort of expressive or whatever, it stays in your body and it, you know, it impacts you, kind of thing. And yeah, for the month that I sort of made that video, even though I'd learned that stuff before, I hadn't really applied it. When I made that video, I was like, you know, every day noticing anger come up, because it's really interesting once you start noticing your anger, how, or your fear or whatever, how often it is coming up. And then you're like, God, I must just be pushing this down all the time.
All the time.
You know, so I was like trying to physically do something every time I felt those feelings. And I was like, wow, that does need to be every day, like they say in the book. And then after that sort of month of like, yes, I'm going to concentrate on this, I just, you know, now I do it maybe once a week kind of thing, but
yeah,
which is not enough.
Yeah, no,
but it just really does make me think about the way that that we need to take things like anger and fear seriously and do something with them for our bodies, because like you say, otherwise they drive us in other ways, and they work their ways out in our body in other ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And like, I think, you know, it makes me think like it's really important for us to learn, especially when we're younger, to like recognize when we're feeling anger, and to learn coping mechanisms, because there are things that we will never be able to change, or that won't change within our lifetimes, no matter how hard we work. So we need to channel that anger into something else. And for you, if it's something physical, like for me, like I've been learning how to channel that because I have more time, because I'm you know, working my own hours. Like for me, like it's always been like going out into nature, because it makes you feel good, but also because it gives you a sense of perspective of how small we actually are, and that like you know, like everything's a drop in the ocean kind of thing. And also like I've been like singing and playing on the guitar more, because I find it relaxing. It helps me breathe, like, because like I think my body's taken on stress and anger so much that like I'm constantly just shallow breathing, because I'm so like even if I don't consciously know it, my body's in that pattern. So like it's really important to recognize when you're feeling like that, and to know what works for you to kind of de-escalate or channel that in a constructive way. Like, and also like like, because I'm a real, like, I know I'm really like loud and energetic in person, but I'm definitely an introvert. Like I need a lot of time to myself, and I really enjoy being by myself. But like I like during isolation, I started getting like really grumpy when like I just couldn't be around people at all. Like I would go out for a bike ride and be like, oh, why are all these people out here? I was just getting like really, really grumpy and pent up. And I realized like I hadn't like hugged anyone in over a month. And I was like, oh, I just needed a hug, you know, like sometimes it can be that simple. Yeah. And you can like get really good at ignoring those things at your own peril. But yeah, sometimes it could just be as simple as like talking to a friend or hugging someone. But little things like that really, really matter, or else they build up. Yeah.
So do you feel like how like I can hear that it's a day-to-day, moment-to-moment kind of struggle and stuff, like you say, especially with your sobriety and stuff like that as well, but how, now that you're listening to your body and stuff more, like how is that feeling for you? Like it's like, I mean, it's lots of things, right? I mean, I guess what I'm wanting to move, what am I trying to say? I guess I don't want this just to be the cautionary tale, and I don't think it is just that, but I'm wanting to sort of draw out a little bit of the, you know, now that you're putting this attention into your well-being and stuff, like how does that feel for you? Like, how does it feel different and stuff compared to how you've been in the past and stuff to you? Yeah, aside from like, because it's really easy to kind of, for me, it's really easy to get into the nerdy, here's all the things you should do stuff. And I guess I just want to know what it's like, you know, how you're finding it, applying that stuff kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's still at the scary stage, because I've never really done it. I don't know. I don't really know what life is going to look like. I'm struggling with slowing down. Like, I'm still frustrated with it. I still feel like I should be doing heaps of stuff. And it, you know, I know you don't want it to just be like a cautionary tale, but like
yeah, sorry, it doesn't have to be and here's the happy ending. I'm just wondering how it is for you.
Yeah, it's scary, but it's also like exciting and hopeful. Like, you know, I've never really known life where you put yourself first, and it's like, oh, what would that be like? I bet it'll be awesome. Yeah, and to not give a shit about what I do with my career anymore, or you know, try and meet everyone else's expectations, whether that be, you know, my family or, you know, or activists. There's such a competitiveness in activism sometimes, which is so toxic. To not give a shit about that anymore. It's exciting, but yeah, it's still at the scary bit where I don't know what it looks like yet. And I think, you know, I kind of wish someone had told me, you know, in my early 20s, like, you need to slow down, you're gonna get really sick, like literally physically sick.
I bet.
Like, I don't regret any of the stuff that I've done, because, you know, I acknowledge that it came out of a place of good intention. But, you know, I could have done it differently, and maybe I won't be so sick now. But
yeah, totally.
But shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like, going forward, it's just a whole new world of possibilities. So
of just finding out what it looks like.
Yeah. Are you finding that as well? Like,
I felt like it's a weird mix. It's a weird mix for me. I find it, I find it hard to answer my own question now that you did it back on me. I think heaps of what you said resonates so much for me. And it's funny because, like, I've stepped back from paid work and from activism. Like, I'm not doing those things out in the world now. But I am raising a child, and so heaps of it, because my life is so different now, because it's not so intellectual, it's more physical, like just care work, you know, for my child and my house and stuff, and, you know, lots of fun and stuff, which is really nice. But it's an interesting one, because it's like I have had a tendency to like I said before, you know, whatever my project is, you know, my job, or like whatever, you know, my PhD or whatever big piece of work that I'm doing, I do tend to sort of, you know, really focus on that. And in some ways, like, this is so different, but in some ways it's not that different, because I'm probably doing the same thing with being a mum as well, you know, where I'm like, all of my focus is here now, kind of thing. And I try to really balance that stuff. I try to balance that stuff, because it's like, on the one hand, it's really natural for me to just put my child's needs first and just meet her needs and ignore my needs. But on the other hand, you know, while also feeling guilty about, like you say, all of the I'm not contributing enough in my career, and I'm not contributing enough as an activist, and, you know, I'm, you know, what a letdown kind of thing, or whatever, trying to push all those voices back. But sorry, diverging, but what I'm saying is, it's my natural thing to just ignore my needs and meet Tui's needs, but I also have to temper that by logically knowing that I am the main person who teaches her to be a person in the world. And so if I model to her, just don't have any needs and just be for the people around you, then that's a shit lesson that she's taking away, you know. And
yeah,
yeah, and so in some ways I still really struggle with that stuff, but also there is another part to it where, like I say, I have got more sort of I have been able to step back from a lot of the work that I was doing, and I'm not, like, my world is pretty, like, because it's just with two and my partner and, you know, play centre and stuff, like, my world is pretty gentle and small and stuff, and I don't have a lot of other people's stress coming in that I have had in the past, you know, like activists, you're surrounded by a whole lot of people who are all burnt out and running on adrenaline, like you said, so I'm not taking that all in all the time and stuff.
Yeah, true.
I do have a lot more opportunity to just kind of be with myself, and because, like, you know, you talked about, like, I did the therapy, and then I've been doing like other kinds of kind of self-love practices and stuff. I find that over time, like, self-love used to feel so weird and wrong and just embarrassing and
yeah,
to me, like, that it would get into a weird kind of egocentric, selfish sort of whatever place.
Yeah.
And it's getting a lot easier for me in that way. Like, yeah, I find that self-love is something that comes more naturally to me. And like you say, because I've things like connecting with nature and stuff, because I try to connect that sort of sense of self-love and self-worth with sort of connecting to the energies around me, like the energies of the sun, or, you know, those kind of things. When I connect it to that, it doesn't feel egotistical. It just feels like being part of the world and being able to be here as part of the world, kind of thing. I don't know, something like that. So
that's really lovely.
Yeah, I think it's I've got more lightness with that over time, I think, and it feels hugely freeing and hugely hopeful, and like there's a lot of energy freed up from all the stuff that I was giving away to other people, I guess, you know. So yeah, but like I say, in some ways it sort of feels untested, because I'm like, well, I've got this nice gentle little bubble of a world now. I'm a little bit nervous about going back into the workplace or back into activist groups and what that looks like. Yeah, if that changes as real as I would like it to be or whatever. So it's a work in progress, and that's why I made this channel as well. Like I've said before,
Totally.
keep my focus on it, because it's really easy to sort of learn about a little bit of this stuff and be like, yeah, I'm going to totally do that, and then just back into the kind of work phase. So
yeah, totally. And you might find that it might look different for you, work and activism might look different for you in the future, and I'm thinking it might be the same for me as well, but
totally,
it's just kind of an unknown at the moment.
Absolutely. That's it. I think if you've got kind of one model from what you've experienced in the past, it's hard to know what it could be. It's just
because like when people ask, oh, what do you want to do, like when you finish your PhD or master's now, and I'm just like, you know, like all I can think of that like really comes from the heart is like, I just want to like sit around and play guitar and grow vegetables and pat dogs. Honestly, that's all I want to do. That's all I want to do. Like, I can't actually think of anything else that I actually desire at the moment. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like.
That sounds amazing.
And it doesn't sound so bad, eh?
No, it sounds really good. It sounds really good. And I mean, when I hear you say that sort of as well, I mean, I don't know if you want other people involved in that picture or not, but that sounds really attractive, and like it could, you know, like other people might want that as well, you know, like there could be ways that you build community around that and stuff, you know, that
absolutely. And I've totally been talking with friends about like I know people our age are constantly talking about, oh, let's get some land together and like, you know, start a commune. They're definitely close friends that you know, we've been talking about doing something like that.
Yeah.
And like it's definitely something I'm seriously looking into. And yeah, because I would just really, really love to just focus on being a person instead of like a, you know, job title or like what I do is defining me as a person. I'd really just like to learn how to be a human. And then like exactly, and then like whatever I discover outside of that, of course, like thanks to capitalism we all have to make a living, but you know, like thankfully I've got enough experience, like I've got a science communications company that I can do contract work with. So you know, that hopefully that can be like a little bit of bread and butter. But yeah, just being a human would be nice to learn how to do properly.
God, I can relate to that so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's something like that's very, you know, personal to you and your journey, and so many people I'm sure watching can relate to it. But the other thing that it makes me think is that what a better world would we be as well if more people were able to do that too, you know, like, and not be just running from that in ways that keep them busy, you know, and build the expectations and the comparisons and all of those things that can make our world feel so toxic, you know.
Yeah, totally. Like what if people just put their energy into being well and being kind and
and doing their
living purposefully.
That's a nice
think about that.
I feel like we've been talking for a while, and it kind of feels like it's coming to maybe a natural conclusion. Is there anything else that you really wanted to talk about, or you feel like?
No, I can't think of anything. It's been a very nice, just natural conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it so much. God, it's so nice to hear your perspective and stuff. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you, sorry, I don't know if we can cut this out if you're not interested in having a big talk about this, but one of the reasons I asked you to talk on this channel was because when ages ago, and maybe this is one of the things that you thought, oh, just too much, but ages and ages ago, when you said that you had gone and studied a course on becoming a stand-up comedian as a self-care tool, I thought that was just the coolest thing I've ever heard. So I love that, and I will link your stand-up comedy channel here as well below. But what are your like? Do you have any sort of thoughts or reflections on that? A little bit further down the track and stuff. Like, are you hoping to do more comedy in the future, or is it?
Totally. I have been doing it a little bit since I moved to Brisbane.
Yeah, cool.
No, it's been like really therapeutic, and it's been like a really cool platform to talk about difficult issues. Like a lot of my stand-up is about like being a survivor of sexual assault, and I talk about climate change a lot. I talk about personal trauma a lot. I talk about like biodiversity loss, the gender wage gap, that sort of, you know, all the hilarious things. So it's like a really therapeutic platform to get stuff off my chest. But another important thing that I've learned is like what works in some circumstances might not in others. So like here it hasn't been such a focus because I've been focusing on my research, but also like basically I only do it if I enjoy it now. Like there's a lot of comedians just like tend to really want to get out there and perform as much as possible to, you know, want to get better because like that's their craft and they're passionate about it, but there's also like a kind of craving for validation. And like luckily I don't have that sort of obsession when it comes to stand up. I only do it if it's fun. And sometimes like I found like audiences in Queensland like a lot more conservative than Wellington.
Right.
So like they don't necessarily receive my jokes as well as audience, like, but there are like more liberal audiences here too, but like in Wellington it's pretty much, you know, the same crowd all the time, and like everyone's it's just like a liberal kind of hippy dippy.
And they're like, thank God somebody's laughing about climate change. I'm going crazy with this sort of thing.
Exactly. But here, you know, that like I've got this like joke about abortions that like absolutely kills every time in Wellington, and here people are like offended by it. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to change myself to get people to laugh. I don't enjoy, like, I'm just not going to do this anymore, you know, like it's fine. Like, so it's okay to like change your coping mechanisms depending on where you are. Like if I, like the first time I got, like I kind of bombed because of that abortion joke, I got really stressed out about it. Because I was like, should I keep doing this? Should I kind of stand by like my principles? Should I try and like recraft the joke so it's more palatable to a more conservative audience? And I talked to, there's a women's comedian group, and I talked to, you know, like legends like Justine Smith and Michelle Acourt about it. And they were like, nah, like stand your ground, queen, you know, like it's a good thing to like talk about abortion and normalize it, and it's talking about your experience and your choices. So like, it shouldn't, you know, like that's yours to talk about, like so, you know, don't change yourself for it. And I'm like, yeah, totally. And so like if I don't get well received, if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. And that kind of applies to everying.
Cool.
In life now, like
good principle.
Because like a friend of mine, Dominic Hoey, he's a poet and novelist, and like he has ankylosing spondylitis as well. And like in an interview, like someone asked him like, what's changed for you since you've gotten sick, and he's like, oh, I only do what I love now because everything else is too painful. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so spot on. And like we should apply that to life, and even if we're not in chronic pain, you know.
That sharpening of your focus though, because of
like when it's not a choice, like you really have to choose how you spend your energy, because the rest of your time you're going to be bedridden. So you have to be picky. Applying that sort of selectivity to how you spend your energy is pretty important.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's
I'm gonna go back to bed after this.
I was just gonna say I'm feeling affected by what you've said, and I couldn't find words that weren't corny, so I won't say any other than that's a really good point that you're making. And it feels like maybe a good place to end, and also just to acknowledge you spending your energy with me here today, and how grateful I am that you wanted to spend some time talking with me about this stuff, because I know that your time and your energy is limited, and I really, really respect your mind, and all your stories and stuff. And so it's just a real privilege to have had you spend some time with me today. And it's also just lovely to see your face again too. So thanks so much for
good
coming.
to see you. Yeah, and thank you for this opportunity to reflect. It's been really good for me to verbalize things I've been thinking about, and to share them with others, and with you, knowing that you've gone through very similar experiences, and to know that you managed to finish a PhD, and that's awesome. But also, like, I don't need to compete with you because we're both still awesome. Like,
100%, completely different set of circumstances, and it always has to be about, like you say, whether it feels good to do, and if it and oh god, toxic competition is so easy to fall into, like so many times when we were talking even in this session, I was like, oh my god, Grace is so amazing, I'm nothing to do. Like, it's pathetic. So let's just wipe that away and try to just clear that from in between us connecting.
Totally. It's been so nice chatting to you.
Yeah, really, really nice. And it was, I loved what you said about the Instagram and having a chance to look back. And so I hope that this is something that you can look back on as well and be like, oh yeah, that was that point. And then there's other points in your journey as well. So
yeah, hopefully I'll be like in a field with like 20 stray dogs that I've rescued and be like, oh look, I've got all the dogs now.
That sounds awesome.
I'd
love to talk to you again another time, and thank you again so much. And I'll just say to the audience watching, again, what a privilege it's been to have Grace here today, and this is hopefully just the first in other people coming to share their reflections on this channel, so look out for other amazing people in here as well. And just this is the first time I've done something like this in this format, so I feel like I should be asking people to applaud you now, but it can't happen in this format. But just so everyone in the world, just anyone who watches this, just send Grace some love, because I'm sure she, would enjoy that little energetic hug.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Ka kite anō.
Ka kite. Bye.
Noho ora mai.